looking at what's happened or what could happen with Brexit and the EU, it is almost a defeat in a sense, because all the good work that has been done, especially within like the EU bloc to reduce emissions, for example, there's been I think it reduced a quarter since 1990. There's been a lot of progress made, which unfortunately now could be reversed. But then taking a bigger focus, because obviously we're talking about mostly, developed countries here. Unfortunately, a lot of the disadvantages from climate change and bad environmental policies is obviously felt by the more developing countries, and also is not always felt equally depending on the different genders.
Yeah.
Is that something that you think is getting enough press?
I think what conservative parties are trying to decouple is climate and social justice. And I think, if we're trying to tackle this crisis, we really need to see this as a combined issue. We cannot solve the climate crisis without also addressing these social justice issues. Climate has an impact on human rights, on migration, on, as you mentioned, gender. And the solutions that we are designing should be, suited for the specific communities that we're trying to address. So, in my view, it's impossible to just, tackle climate issues without looking at the social aspect of that as well. And I think on the United Nations level, that has already been accepted. But in actually implementing that on a domestic level, there's still a long way to go, I would say. Yeah.
I don't think it's discussed enough as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot more people would care more maybe if they knew more about the social aspect of climate change.
Yeah, and also, as I said, with migration, for example, I think a lot of people might not be aware that some migration flows are actually, stemming from environmental issues. So, we're really looking at these issues as compartmentalized, siloed issues, and we should really try to underline how they interconnect and how, therefore, the issues or like the solutions that we're trying to design also address all of these aspects.
In terms of some of the solutions that we're trying to work on, recently, after 20 years of negotiation, the EU-Mercosur deal has finally been finalized. Do you feel like that's 20 years well spent?
Personally, no.
Why not?
Well, I think EU trade policy in general, trade policy is designed for economic gain. And sure, that may have worked well in the past, but when we're actually being serious about tackling this climate crisis, you cannot put trade and the economy first. You have to put the environment first. And you have to look at how trade impacts the environment. And if you are incentivizing trade in meat, for example, then that has an impact on deforestation. And if you don't underline these issues, and if you don't highlight these issues, then people don't know about them. So if we want to, again, tackle this climate crisis, we have to look at how we trade and how we incentivize certain products that are harming the environment. And we have to be coherent about this.
So definitely, I think a big issue is the lack of knowledge around those issues. So what do you think is the solution to that? How do we make people more aware as to what is going on and about the relationship between environment and the social aspects of it?
Well, I think we all have a role to play in that, really. Talk about it with your colleagues. Do your research. I mean, people are always asking me, what can I do? Should I switch to paper straws, or should I eat less meat? And all of these things are great, but like, if there's only one thing that you have time to do, then learn about it. Read about it. Read about it. There's enough on the internet that you can find. There's great reports, great summaries of reports if you only have a couple of minutes. And I really think that it's all of our task, because clearly our politicians aren't doing it for us. So it's kind of our task. And especially, I would say, as young people, people always say, it's like our future generation, but it's already happening now.
It's our present.
It's already happening now. If you look at extreme weather events, rising sea levels, it's not something in the distant future. It's already happening. And if we still want to have like a livable planet for our children, then it's our task to remind our politicians about that.
How would you respond to Donald Trump's statement that global warming doesn't exist?
Yeah, well,
It's quite hard to respond to that.
yeah, what can you say? Really, I don't think that there's any way that you can reason with Donald Trump, and I don't really think that we should waste our time talking to Donald Trump about this. What we should put our energy in is, helping the next presidential election, and supporting candidates that do take this issue seriously. And I think that's a better way to spend your time than trying to convince someone that cannot be convinced.
But do you think the fact that he is so unconvincible and so convinced that climate change doesn't exist is harmful to the debate?
Yeah, 100%. Because, as I say, there are quite radical changes that are needed. And the only thing that is needed for, big oil companies and people is just a little bit of doubt, And of course, Donald Trump has a big following. So if he can still instill a little bit of doubt in some of his followers, then that is very harmful to the debate. Because, of course, it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot easier to not do anything.
Of course.
And that's what we have been doing since the 80s, Yeah. So, it's definitely harmful to the debate. And it's our task to highlight that actually 97% of climate scientists agree that this is happening and that we as humans are responsible for this. And we have all the solutions, It's not that we still have to do a lot of research. We know what we have to do. We just have to do it.
Yeah, agreed.
Would you put climate change as the number one issue that we're facing right now?
Yes, but with the caveat that it is so linked to all of the other issues that we're facing. So when you say, climate change is important, we're going to worry about human rights later, I think that's the wrong approach, because you have to acknowledge that they're linked and that your solution should be linked. So it should definitely be high on the priority list, but you have to look at the other issues and look for the connections.
I know you run for office for the Green Party, and I would like to ask you whether you think the Green parties around the world are doing enough, or whether there's more for them to do.
Yeah, well, I think they definitely have been doing enough, but they have been helped by these youth movements around the world. Yeah. And I think that was definitely the momentum that they needed. And as you said, this big rise, this green wave in the European Parliament elections was definitely helped by these youth strikes all over the world. I think one thing that green groups and green parties have not really been doing is also underlining the benefits of working on this climate crisis. We live in London. London is a dirty city. Would it not be amazing if we had some clean air, Would it not be amazing if our cities would be a little bit greener, a little bit more livable? So not just saying, it's going to be horrible, you can never eat meat, you can never fly again. That's not the reality, Underlining the benefits of climate action is something that we as environmentalists should maybe do a little bit more.
I think people are just a little bit lazy and probably used to the status quo. That's what it is, unfortunately. And it seems like it has to take something drastic happening to make action, which then it would be too late.
I mean, I would say something drastic is already happening.
Well, that is true, but I don't want to panic everybody.
Could you give us some specific examples, actually, of those societal changes which are interlinked with climate change happening around the world?
Human rights violations around the world are linked with environmental degradation. Also, when you talk about biodiversity, for example, there are up to 200 species going extinct on a daily basis. Wow. That's already happening now. And it's because of us, When all of these animals we can no longer see in the future. And it's just crazy if you think about it. And also with migration, there are a lot of areas in the world that are already becoming inhabitable, and these people have to go somewhere. And of course, we are in this beautiful city, we don't notice that immediately, but we did notice these heat waves this summer, did we not? And that was already pretty horrible, and older people were also dying because of that. And these weather events are only getting more extreme, and we need to stop it right now.
What do you think about Boris Bikes? Do you think this is a step towards the right direction, and the fact that there has been a rise over the last few years, especially in London, of people biking to work as opposed to driving, say,
Yeah.
or using the tube.
Yeah, no, 100%. Public transport has a big role to play in that, especially cycling, of course, is great. Yeah, and that's something that you also see in a lot of other cities. And
There's a big cycling culture in the Netherlands.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're very used to it. For us, it's very normal, but everything is so close by, so that's already very normal. But yeah, that's definitely something that's helping.
Yeah.
And I think we could do even more. There are a lot of flights that have been taking every day, and just invest in international train networks to make it easier and make it an actual alternative to take the train. It's really crazy that taking the train from London to Berlin is more expensive than flying to New York.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, the trains in the UK are very expensive as well.
As
Just
well,
to get
yeah.
across the UK,
Yeah.
it's cheaper to fly to Denmark than
Yeah.
to go to Scotland on the train, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
So but then you've got to bring in companies and you've got to incentivize companies to change, which can be difficult.
But the government also has a role to play in this,
Of
you
course.
know. They are subsidizing the wrong types of transport.
Yeah.
And it's actually not that hard to incentivize the other way. Yeah.
So I suppose other than obviously voting for a party that care about climate and maybe riding a Boris bike, what else? Could you give us a few other quick tips maybe that our users could learn about how they can be a bit more mindful?
I would say speaking up, you know, attending climate strikes is definitely helping, putting a lot more pressure on the environment. When you live in the UK, write to your MP, write to your member of the European Parliament as well. And then when it comes to lifestyle changes, well, be a little bit more mindful about your diet, maybe cutting out meat, maybe also cutting out dairy if you can. I know it's a big transition to go vegan all of a sudden, but when you look at your emissions, especially when you live in Western countries, that can definitely help. Also, take the train whenever possible. Think about if it's really needed to fly to the other side of the world, if you just have one meeting, you know, can that also be done through other ways? And also when it comes to fashion, think a little bit longer whether you will buy that Zara top or H&M, and think of more sustainable ways to do all of these things.
Well, it's been very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah.
Definitely very knowledgeable on the topic.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
That's great. Yeah.
Thank you. It's been super fascinating. And thank you to our viewers. I hope you've enjoyed another episode. And if you are enjoying our content, make sure that you do like and subscribe.
See you next time.
See you.
It's that new age, it's that new age.